How's it going, Luke? Doing well? Doing well? Morning, Taylor. Um, Gabe, if you did it from just the textbook and wrote it down, you can just email me an image of the homework. That's fine. Um, Especially if for those of you having trouble accessing it through my math lab. I'm still trying to figure out what the deal is there. Um, my understanding is with my math lab that we should be able to use the same book for both classes, both the 1324 and the 0424 class that we're in now. And so you shouldn't have to enter the access code again. It may just be a matter of going and logging in to the Pearson website directly and accessing it that way. Um, so it's not due until Wednesday. Um, so if you all want to try to do it the other way, we can, and we'll certainly look at it afterwards and see if there's any questions you'll have now about a particular type of problem. We can go over it. Yes, Luke, and actually, that's one thing that Mrs. Knisley messaged me about earlier. She wants me to go over some examples for that because she feels like she didn't do enough yet in her class to make you feel comfortable with that. Specifically, I think she said section 8.2. Is that what you're thinking about? Yeah, yeah. So we'll do that today for sure. Yeah. Yeah, James, I've I mentioned that a minute ago. I'm not sure what's going on, to be honest. If we back out of that, if we go to just the Canvas page, we go to My Lab and Mastering, then here we should be able to open My Lab and Mastering, or we should be able to go to All Assignments, and ideally it'll show up here as a homework assignment. Um, so I'm not quite sure what's happening. Some people said that they needed it asked them to enter their access code again, which we shouldn't need a second access code. The book that we bought is for the other that you have for the 1324 is the same as the book that we're using for 0424. So there's no reason to buy the same book twice, basically. Um, so I'm not quite sure what's happening there. Excuse me. Anyway, um, One option may be just to go to MyMathLab through just your web browser and log in that way and see if that works. I made sure to post the course ID. Oh, which is it specifically, James? Sorry. Oh, sorry. So this ideally is what you'll see when you go into MyMathLab. Then you see the homework there. It's showing the internet access code. Okay. Hmm. And that's when you click the button or you go here either way. Or do you even see this page? Sorry, I keep switching back and forth. Um, well, you shouldn't have to enter the access code again. That's the whole point. Um, because you already own the book, essentially, at least for 18 months or 18 weeks or whatever it is. Um, Not really own, I guess. We already are able to access the book for the semester. Um, so you don't need to enter the access code again. Hmm. I'll I'll ask around some of the other professors and see what they have to say about that. I'm not familiar with it. I haven't run into this problem before, but I will see if they have any insight on this. Don't panic about the due date because if y'all can't access it, I'm certainly not going to hold that against you. Um, but I know a couple of people have gotten in there, so if they have any insight, please let me know if there's something that y'all did that everyone else needs to do. Okay. Did were there other questions before we? So you access it through Professor Knisely's page. This is a supplement to business math. So we're using the exact same book for it. There's no separate textbook or anything like that. So we should still be able to access the book through this Canvas as well as your other Canvas. But yeah. Yeah, like I said, don't worry about it if you're not able to access it. We'll That sounds rough, man. It is rough. I'm not gonna assign too many things for y'all. Mainly, what we want to do in class um, is work on any questions, any concerns you're having for the other course, as well as work on essential skills that would be necessary for the other course as you go forward and further along into the semester. So, your main Math 1324 course will cover chapters 3 through, I believe it's 3 through 8 in that textbook. Not necessarily in that order, because I know that she's rearranged the order, which is actually a pretty good order that she's created as far as level of not necessarily difficulty, but level of mathematical rigor is a good way of expressing it. Because I know a lot of you are questioning what's going on with the Venn diagrams, but we'll talk about that some today also. But it anyway, yeah. So we'll be covering portions of chapter 1 and 2 as necessary in this part of the course. And again, this is really just to prepare you for later parts that you'll get to eventually. Yeah, it's not easy to see the connection at this moment. Like what we've been talking about with the fractions and the square roots and things like that, that's just the basic things that you will need as we move further into this class with exponents also. Because that a lot of that you'll see in chapter 5 specifically. I believe it's chapter 5 with the applications to financial math, and if I remember right, that should follow what you'll do in chapter 8 and 9. Yes. So I'm not going to assign any more homework until we get this thing figured out with my math lab and make sure it's connected properly. It's all good, Corey. But yeah, we'll still be working on stuff in this class, but especially if you have questions from the other course, I want us to take time to go over those. Okay. Now, you mentioned the Venn diagrams. This is on page 412 in section 8.2. Now, did you look at example 5 here in your other course? Okay. Now, Mrs. Knisley suggested I go over checkpoint 5, which is basically the same question, but with some different values plugged in. And we can do more than that if we want to. We just want to get started at some point. didn't cover any of chapter 2 yet, neither class, I think. Okay. Let's go over this example 5. We want to think about our thought process here. And we're looking at, basically, we have three a Venn diagram with 3 different circles that we want to create. This is just one of those things that the state of Texas requires us to teach. I think in most cases you don't necessarily see a whole lot of these things, but being able to understand them does convey a certain level of mastery, I guess. But it can be frustrating for sure. So we have fever, we have chills, and we have headaches. Now, the easiest place to start when we're doing one of these is to look at what they have in common before we look at the individual values. So we said over here that 35 have all 3 symptoms. So we know 35 people are going to be in this overlap for all 3 of the circles. So we got that accounted for. Next, now when we look at the number that have chills and headache, and we look at the number that have fever and headache, and we look at the number that have fever and chills, that includes the 35 people that have all 3 symptoms. So 55 people have fever and chills, but 35 of them also have a headache, for instance. 47 have fever and headache, but 35 also have chills from that group. 49 have chills and a headache, but 35 of those also have a fever. So when we look at all 3, okay, that's the overlap of all 3. But if we look at fever and chills, for instance, right here, this area, actually these 2 areas are where fever and chills overlap. We know 35 have all 3 symptoms. How many more have chills and fever together without a headache? Well, 35 have all 3 symptoms. 55 have fever and chills, so that means 55 minus 25, or 35. When it says and, this is an intersection, so we're looking at the intersection of the 2 circles. Okay. So there's 55 people in this intersection of fever and chills. 35 of them are already here, so the other 20 must be right there. So between the 2 of these things, it adds up to 55. Now, we move on to fever and headache, which is this part over here. There's 47 total in that intersection. 35 of them are already accounted for here, so that means the other 12 and 35 makes 47, so the other 12 must be over here that have fever and headache but no chills, because they're outside the chills circle. Now we have 49 that have chills and a headache down here, so the intersection of these 2 circles is in this area. Now of those 49, again, we have 35 here, so how many are going to be left in this other location? Good. So those 2 numbers combined add up to 49. These 2 numbers combined add up to 47. And these 2 numbers combined add up to 55. And that's how we're getting those numbers. Is that making sense so far? What were you all watching before where it wasn't explained by a person? You have robots teaching you? What's happening there? Does she just do a recording, or is she actually teaching y'all live? Yeah, and honestly, math is one of the hardest things you can try to learn from a book, as opposed to, say, history or philosophy. Hmm. Alright, let's continue with this problem. So, we've taken care of all the intersection parts. Sorry to hear that, Andrea. We'll and it'll also be on YouTube indefinitely. So even after this, if y'all want to revisit this topic later, then yeah, we'll keep it on YouTube also. All the links are in the Canvas announcements. Alright, so we took care of all the intersections, okay, all three, and then intersections of two different circles. Now let's look at the individual maladies. We have 67 people that reported a headache. Now, that means in this circle for headache, there should be 67 people total. Now, these three numbers here, we can go ahead and add those together. So inside the headache circle, we have 12, 35, and 14. And so that's already 61 people. So, right, we still need 6 more that only have a headache, because we have 67 headaches total. These add up to 61, so there must be 6 more people that only have this one symptom. It's possible. Some of these are the correct symptoms. Now for chills, again, 72 total people reporting chills as a symptom. And we look at inside the circle already, we have 20, 35, and 14. So how many people have chills but no other symptoms? 3, good. And then we look at fever. And we have 74 inside the fever circle. So we already have 20, 35, and 12. That's 67. So how many have only fever symptoms but none of the others? 7, right. Okay. Now, we know that we have 100 people total that should fit in this box. So combined, let's see, we have the 35 that have all 3 symptoms, 12, 14, and 20 that have 2 symptoms, and then 6, 3, and 7 that only have 1 symptom. That adds up to 97 people. So we know that beyond that, there's only 3 more patients left, and that's the 3 that reported no symptoms. So there's 3 more outside the 3 circles, and that adds up to 100 total. And that completes our Venn diagram there. Yeah, what is the term for that? It's not a null set. It's working with a complement. Absolutely, we can try that. Let's figure out this term though. Yeah, it's not the complement for the 3. Well, technically 3 is the complement of the 97. What do we call that? It's neither fever nor chills nor headache. It might be the complement of the rest of them, or you call it the no set. Is that what the Mrs. Nicely was saying? Okay. Okay. I mean, it's acceptable either way. We just know that there's 3 people here that are kind of on the outside of these circles because they don't have any of those 3 symptoms. So yeah, they don't fit any of those 3 sets, so we can call it the no set. That makes sense. I've never heard it called that, but again, different textbooks use different things, so it just depends on the textbook really, and the teacher, to be honest. You're right. You're right. Yes, 2 to the 4th, mm-hmm. Which is 16. This has eight elements. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, because it's 2 to the 3rd power. Going back to exponents. Okay, let me see if I find one with a complement from the problems in the textbook. Oh. We'll get there, don't worry about it. Let's see. Now, are y'all is this kind of the thing what you're talking about, Luke, with the complements? Where it wants us to find A and C complement union B. Okay, let me, sorry. I'll draw that up. Okay. Actually, we can work on some of the elements of that before we do the actual problem. That may be better approach. So when we talk about the complement of a set, what this is saying is everything that is outside that particular set. So, if we had a single set A, then everything outside of it would be a complement. Okay? So A would be the circle in the center, a complement would all be the area outside of that. Now if we had two sets, here's A and here's B. Now this area inside, do you remember what that's called? Where the two sets overlap? That's the intersection. So for that we'll write A and B. Okay. And so if we wanted, I'm getting a little off the screen, if we wanted A union B, we know that would be the combination of the two things. So this is A intersect B, and this is A union B. So intersect is what they have in common, and union is the combination of both sets together, what one circle contains plus what the other circle contains. There is some overlap there, but it's not a concern. It is still part of the union. Okay. Now, when we get three sets, as you can imagine, it gradually gets more complicated the more sets that we add. So I'll call this A, B, and C. A little bit different than what the book looks like. I'll try to come up with a different. Actually, I'm sorry. There's something else I wanted to do with the two sets before we move to three. So we want to look at A complement intersect B. So A complement is all of the area that's outside of A. B is all of the area that's inside of B. And we want to figure out where those two things overlap. Now, I know it's difficult to kind of pose the response to this. But if we think of this as area 1, area 2, area 3, and area 4, which of those four areas would be filled in? and it could be more than one, potentially. So it has to be outside of A, but inside B. Both of you are saying 4. One of you also said 1. Remember, we want the outside part of A intersecting with B. Okay. Now, we know A intersect B is this region right in the middle. This is A intersect B. But we're not looking at A, we're looking at A complement, which is everything that's outside of A. Now, if we look at what's outside of A, that's this region 1 is outside of A, and region 4 is outside of A. So both of those numbers exist outside of the circle that A represents. Now we look at what B represents. B consists of regions 3 and 4. So A complement is section parts 1 and 4, or areas 1 and 4, I guess we can call them. B is areas 3 and 4. So what do those have in common? Where do those intersect? Four. Which I know several of y'all said already, but I wanted to make sure we're thinking about. A contains sections 2 and 3. Yeah, because if we look at the circle that represents A, it's both of these together. So I'm calling 2 just this part of A that's not inside B, and I'm calling 3 just the overlapping part, and I'm calling 4 just the part that's in B but not in A. So maybe that was a little bit confusing. But yeah, the 4 is certainly in common to both. So that's the part that will shape. So A is this circle. Everything outside of that, it's this area outside, as well as this part of B that's not in common with A. It's outside the circle of A right here. So we're looking at 1 and 4 as being the outside area from A complement, and 3 and 4 as being everything that's inside the B circle, and then both of those have 4 in common, so 4 is our answer in that case. So that's one way that we can consider it. We can look at each of these different regions as their separate areas and figure out, okay, what does each of these consist of, and then we try to find either the intersection or the union of those different areas. Keeping on with just 2 circles, A, B. This one will be interesting. We have, let's look at A complement union B complement. So we think of it again as 4 different sections. 1, 2, 3, 4. Again, 2 and 3 are completely separate areas. So the part in here in 3 is outside the part here that's 2. Okay. So we think about, okay, what areas does a complement incorporate? Does this look blurry to you? Yeah, 4 and 1. Yeah, for some reason it's not focusing. There it goes. Okay. Sorry about that. Just had to confuse the camera. Alright, so 1 and 4 are part of A complement. What about B complement? What does B complement include? B complement is areas 1 and 2. So, we think about now, if we want the union, we know at the intersection we looked at where the two things overlapped, what they had in common. If we want the union, though, what would we do with these areas? Shade all of them, right. So we want regions 1, 2, and 4 so we'll end up shading everything except 3. 3 will be completely open. Because basically the union says we want to combine all these things together. So 1, 4, and 2, that only leaves 3 is the only thing that we did not shade. Is that making sense so far? Good, good. Now let's do one with 3 circles, because I know that's definitely the more challenging aspect here. A, B, and C. Now I'm going to go ahead and label this 1 on the outside, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then finally 8 in the middle. Let's see. This is from page, what is this, 414. So we're looking at number 11, which is A, union, B, complement.